Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz. We are going to be here doing a garage review of this thing, the FV215B183, aka the Death Star. So named because it has got a planet-destroying gun on it, the 183mm gun. And it is a kind of a cult tank destroyer, just because of how much damage it can do in a shot. It is very fun, but it's also not that great at the same time. So looking at it there, 1908 HP, and that's with improved assembly. If I took off improved assembly, we'd get to 1800 HP, which compared to something like the Jagdpanzer E100, which has got 2000 without improved assembly. If we compare it to something like the Grill, which has got 1700. The American tank destroyers, 110E3 has got 1800. 110E4 has got 1800. Look at maybe the 4005, which has got 1800. Yeah, it's sort of got low to average sort of health for a tank destroyer. Because yeah, it goes up 108, so yeah, it goes to about 1800 HP, which is it's not that great. It's not as much as something like the Jagdpanzer. Yeah, it is about 500 less than the 215B. It's not amazingly low, but then at the same time, it's not astoundingly high to note. Which is, kind of a bit of a problem since you don't have that much armor either. 127 front of the turret, 101 side, 76 front of the hull, 127 50 side, and 76 rear. Yeah, it is not very well armored at all. HE can pen you through your side armor or rear armor. Maybe even if the HE is particularly buff, it can get through your frontal armor as well. Let alone premium or regular AP rounds. This thing just cannot bounce shots at all. You can maybe bounce shots off your little gun mantlet there if the shot is very unlucky to hit that and maybe doesn't pen or ricochets, or maybe it hits the turret at a funny angle or the frontal armor at a funny angle, but otherwise it's really not that well armored at all. Which is probably good for keeping it from being so OP, because if this thing had armor and that gun, yeah, it would be probably OP, I do have to admit. However, without having any substantial armor, if we look at something like the 121B, which has got 120 frontal hull, and this is a medium tank, yeah, you can see it's got the same sort of frontal armor as a medium tank, and this thing is arguably a better vehicle than this, depending on who you speak to. Then yeah, just the armor is not great at all. 262 meters view range, yeah, there goes that. Top speed 19, 13.3 power to weight ratio, 16.69 turret, and a 28.68 hull reverse. It really is not a particularly mobile tank. We have a look at something like the 215B here, which has got a 13.6 power to weight, 28 average speed, weighs 20 tons more, but has got a better turret and hull reverse degrees. With a 950 horsepower engine, this thing has got what engine? An 800 horsepower engine. So yeah, it really is not mobile at all. Compared to something like the Jagdpanzer, it is, well, it's got a better power to weight, it's got slightly worse average speed, it has got sort of the same / better hull reverse, but with a weaker engine. Obviously this thing has more armor, so it needs a better engine. But even so, something like the Mouse, 22, 9.3, 14 degrees turret, 21 degrees hull. It's slightly more mobile than a Mouse. It doesn't have a fully traversable turret either, something to note. The traversal angles are 45 degrees per side, which is not bad. That's better than something like the Jagdpanzer, but then it is a fixed gun. So this thing does at least have a traversable turret, 45 degrees either way, which is, there's fairly decent traversal angles. Not as good as something like the 110E4? 110E4, which has got 90 degrees per side, so yeah, you can sort of broadside people with it. Turret to tank destroyers, for them, they don't have any. 4005, which has got a 90 degrees per side, but then obviously you can't turn this thing all the way to the side because of the gun. It would tip over when it fired as well. So that's the reasoning for that. But even so, 45 degrees, it's at least still something. You're not a fully fixed gun tank destroyer. So, you know, you do at least have that going for you. But of course, the main reason that people get this tank is not for the mobility, it's not for the armour, it's not for the health, it's for the gun, which is a 183mm L4 gun. It is the Death Star cannon, hence why it's got the name Death Star. It's got a 5.6 aim time, 0.38 dispersion, 19, nearly 20 second reload. However, the AP has got 310 average pen, 220 with premium heat, with premium HE, and 92 with regular heat HE. 930 average damage with AP, 1300 with HE for both. 5 degrees of gun depression, 5 degrees of gun elevation. Yeah, it is a monstrous gun, and it is the reason everyone gets it. It has got the highest amount of average damage, I think, in the game, out of any gun. It is the biggest gun. The next biggest, I think, is probably going to be the Yagi 100, which has got the 170mm, but that only does 800 average damage with AP. It has heat and HE, which doesn't quite do as much as the Death Star. Yeah, the reason why everyone loves the Death Star as a cult version instead of the Jagdpanzer is because of that armor-piercing round, which does 930. You can easily do 1,000 damage a shot with one of these shots, which is a third of the mouse's health. Yeah, it is very easily able to wipe out half the HP of someone, especially a tank that is at a lower tier, so a tier 9 tank. You know, it can quite easily wipe out over half of their health. And the HE as well, the premium Hesh, is why people go for this thing as well, because 220 mils of pen on an HE round, which does 1300 damage. You can get through the lower glacis of Americans, most certainly. A lot of people, I reckon, probably struggle with the American tanks, because if we have a look at them, the frontal armour sort of here is very strong, especially with the machine gun turret not being a weak spot anymore as well. People struggle with this tank. You can get through the lower glacis on these tanks, M103, T110s, those sorts of tanks. You can get through the lower glacis, and you can get through it with premium HE from a Death Star. And that's why people like driving the Death Star, especially with the premium rounds. They cost a lot of credits, but they do a lot of damage. You know, 1300 damage on average. You get a good high roll, 1500 damage. That's half the health of a mouse. Not that you'll probably be able to pen a mouse with premium HE, but even so, that's a lot of damage to be doing in a single shot. Obviously, the drawback is the reload and the aim time. Even with refined gun, that's still a 0.38 accuracy. It really is not accurate at all, but it doesn't matter when you can roll around a corner and derp someone in the face and do 1,000 damage. It just is an absolute monstrous gun, and it's monstrously fun to use as well, which is why people drive the Death Star. You're not going to make that many credits in it, especially if you lose and you fire off a couple of rounds of premium. But even so, it is still a very fun tank with that gun, and the gun is the only reason this tank is fun, to be honest. If it had a different gun, something like a 20-pounder or a 32-pounder or something, a gun which only does 400-ish average damage, it wouldn't be nowhere near as fun to play, and you would see a lot less of them. But because it has got that 183mm L4 gun, it is just an absolute fun monster tank to play, doing so much damage in a single shot. You get 3 shots on target, that's easy 3k damage in this tank, which is crazy to think. And that's not even including if those were all HE, for example, or fires. So, I mean, yeah, it is a big old gun to hit someone with. And it's the reason why people play the tank, and it's the only reason the tank is fun, is because of the gun. It's not for any other attributes. But yeah, so there you go, that's the overview of the stats. As for consumables, you've of course got your standard repair, first aid, fire. You've got engine power boost, 20% to engine power for 15 seconds. You've got adrenaline, 20% to load speed and 10% chance of damaging enemy vehicle modules, which is not too bad of an idea on this tank. Get that 20-second reload time down. That's with all the bells and whistles, not including consumer provisions. And then you've got your multi-purpose, which is those top 3 rolled into one. As for provisions, you've of course got standard and improved fuel for 3 and 10% respectively to engine power and turret reverse. Black tea and tea and pudding, which is again not too bad of an idea to get that dispersion down for 1, reload time down for 2, and general stat boost for 3. So yeah, if you have the credits to spare, that you can reliably lose credits on this tank if you go and mount all of these premium consumables and provisions. If you can afford that, then go ahead, whack on tea and pudding and black tea for a definite, and then maybe improve fuel for the final. Just because, yeah, that reload time, if you can get that reload time down to, like, 16, 17 seconds, yeah, it's not too bad for a 120. So yeah, you can go ahead and mount them as you want. As for ammo, 15 rounds of ammo. It's not that much. It's highly unlikely that you'll be able to fire off all of those shells in a match, but even so, do be careful with how much ammo of each type you load. Load more AP than anything else. Have a similar setup to what I have, maybe, where you have a majority of it as being AP, or at least half of it being AP, and then the rest of it you can choose to either be premium or regular HE. And this is what I mean by the premium HE being so expensive to run consistently. 6,800 credits a go, and if you fail to pen or you miss and you don't get your credits worth out of it, then that's just a waste. I mean, the regular shells are nearly 2.5k each to fire. Premium regular HE is, just under 2k to run if you were going only HE, which you probably could do. You'd still do about 500 average damage with splash, which is still not too bad, but even so, AP you could be doing double it, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, don't just load straight HE and premium HE. Do at least have some AP, because the AP is still very useful, especially for getting through the fronts of heavies. With 310 average pen, it's got very, very good penetration numbers on this tank, so do just remember that. So do be careful when you're loading up your ammo. Again, you're not likely to run out of ammo in a match, but just in case you do start to get low because it's a long match and you are having to carry somehow in a Death Star, then yeah, just do bear that in mind. As for equipment, definitely gun rammer. You don't need calibrated shells, but then again, it's not too bad of an idea, especially for the HE. You get your regular HE to above 100 average pen, and your premium goes all the way up to 242. So not too bad of an idea for the HE pen. However, I think the gun rammer is just far more useful. But I understand people do go with calibrated shells for HE and heat, because as you can see, they get a 10% bonus instead of a 5% bonus. So yeah, I run gun rammer, but I can understand using calibrated shells. Improved modules for the extra track durability. I mean, honestly, you do tend to get focused if you get spotted out in the open, because people want to get your gun out of the game for very obvious reasons. So, maybe the improved modules for the extra track durability, just in case that does happen, you can maybe continue going with just a damage track. Then I'd say coated optics. However, it does work as a tank destroyer. It's probably better if you play it as a backline tank destroyer rather than a frontline assault gun, because you don't really have the armor for being an assault gun. However, it can work. Obviously, you just have to make sure you have allies with you who will take the shots so that you can just pop out and shoot without damaging yourself. So I can understand Camonet. It really is a choice of how you want to play it. Enhanced gun lane drive, definitely get your aim time down. That is crippling. That is crippling aim time. So definitely go and enhance gun lane drive. Improved assembly for the extra HP. You do not have the armor to bounce anything. That would be a waste of an equipment slot if you go for enhanced armor. So definitely go with improved assembly instead for the extra HP. Improved control, you could go for the extra hull traverse. However, engine accelerator, I've now been finding, is actually probably better. You get a better power to weight out of it, and better average speed, better engine power, and you get a slight buff to the hull traverse. This gets you up to 28.68, however this gets you up to 27.9, so bit of a strange one. Then I would say refined gun, get that gun dispersion down. You miss a shot in this tank, it is depressing, because you have a 20-second reload time before you can fire again, not including if you've got an injured loader and or damaged ammo. If you have damaged ammo and an injured loader, you're looking at about a minute reload time, which, oh boy, that's a long reload. So yeah, if you do miss a shot in this tank, it is crippling. So definitely refined gun. And then I would say enhanced tracks for the, so that your suspension goes up to 100%. And then your choice of whatever the hell those two things are. So overall, the Death Star, I know it had a nerf a couple of patches ago from when I'm recording this, and people were outraged about it, but honestly it's still a fun tank. It may not be as good as it used to be, however it wasn't particularly that good anyway. If we're being brutally honest with ourselves, it doesn't have particularly great mobility, it doesn't have particularly great armour, it doesn't have particularly great much to go for it, really. It doesn't have the same gun arc as the other tier 10 turreted tank destroyers, so the only thing that was going for it is the gun, and the gun is still fun, the gun is still good, it's still a fun tank. Get it if you want to have fun, definitely. Don't get it if you're expecting it to be an amazing tank that you can carry games left, right and centre, or bounce shots like you can in, say, the Mouse. But it is still fun, I do still like it. And yeah, it's the Death Star, how can you not like it? I mean, come on, you'd have a gun that does 1,000 average damage. How can you not like that? But there you go, the Death Star. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.